Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong, the podcast about rural economic development. Our podcast today is coming to you from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in beautiful downtown Jackson, Tennessee. And we have a tremendous guest today. We have a lady that is widely known really throughout the country as being an expert on retail development, and you'll soon learn how knowledgeable she is and how successful she has been in helping communities. Lacy Beasley, welcome to RuralStrong.
Well, thank you, Joe Barker. I'm excited to have this conversation today. You do such a great job being an advocate for rural communities, and we have a long history together. So, just looking forward to having the conversation.
Well, Lacy is the president of Retail Strategies, which is a full-service advisory firm that works with municipalities on retail and restaurant business recruitment through commercial and real estate connections. And, I think our listeners, Lacy, would be interested in your journey, your background to bringing us up to date to how you eventually became president of Retail Strategies.
Well, sure. Yeah, it's a fun story, and it actually started in your neck of the woods. I went to college at Freed-Hardeman University in Henderson, Tennessee, and I went there on a volleyball scholarship. I actually grew up in New Mexico and West Texas, and that's how I ended up in Tennessee. It was through that scholarship. When I finished at Freed-Hardeman, I transferred over to Lipscomb and moved to Nashville and started working at the Dickson County Chamber of Commerce right after I had graduated from Lipscomb, and learned a lot about community development and economic development at the Dickson County Chamber of Commerce. It was a chamber that did both, and I started to understand the public sector and those motivating factors. And, Dixon's a rural community. At that time, the population was about 15,000 people. Henderson, at the time I went to school there, population around 8,000 people. And I grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, which had a population of probably about 35,000 when I was growing up. So I've always been around rural communities, and I've always been passionate about the sense of community that you feel in a rural community, and the village it takes, where everybody supports each other, and the easy way of life, the good quality of life that you get there. So when I was at the Dickson County Chamber of Commerce, I learned a lot, really enjoyed that job. But it came time for me to move to Nashville because of an opportunity that my husband had. And I started looking around and found a position at a company called the Shopping Center Group, and interviewed for that job and interviewed to work with Bill Vaughn, who was my mentor. And what Bill did in Tennessee was he worked as a tenant representation broker, which basically means he was hired by retailers, several national retailers, to find their locations in Tennessee and Kentucky. So some of the brands that Bill worked for were Costco, Best Buy, Dick's Sporting Goods, TJ Maxx. You think about it, it's all those usual suspects that follow a Target Power Center. And what he would do is negotiate real estate transactions with the developers to get those retailers there. And for every retailer, they need to really understand that local community, understand the market, understand if they can be profitable there if they open a new location. And so Bill really handled from the real estate side, and my role in working with Bill was to handle from the research side. So I was hired to be a GIS and research specialist, working with him on all the site expansion. And at that time, that was before Google Maps, and we were using fax and FedEx, and and it was a lot
I
more
remember that.
complex. It was a lot harder back then. Yeah. I remember when Google came out, I thought that I was out of a job, but it's like anything in advance, just what we did. And then Bill retired, and I I ended up taking on some of those tenant rep accounts and working as a broker at the shopping center group. Really enjoyed it. But, is during that time, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to if you're, if you've been in the workforce for more than 20 years, the Great Recession hit. And that was a real challenging time as a broker. Then you eat what you kill. You only get paid a commission when a new client you're representing opened their store. And that was a time when everyone was closing their stores. And just really hard times on commercial real estate. And what was interesting is I started observing how everybody was changing during the Great Recession. Economic development directors were in the same boat, where the traditional prospects that they were reaching out to, the industrial manufacturing prospects, those high paying primary jobs, um, they weren't expanding either. And the economic development directors were saying, well, we've never wanted to prioritize retail because those are not the high paying jobs. And we think that you get the good jobs, rooftops follow that, and then retail follows the rooftops. So retail will take care of itself. But during that time, it was like, well, let's go after some of these retailers and restaurants because an average fast food restaurant still employs 30 people, and an average grocery store could be the largest employer in town for a lot of rural communities. They could have 200 or more people working there. So a lot of communities started coming to the ICSC conferences. And ICSC is an organization that has about 50,000 members. It is the primary networking organization for everyone that's involved in retail commercial real estate. So the retailers, real estate managers, it's the brokers, the tenant reps, the attorneys, and the communities. And a lot of communities started coming to the ICSC shows. And really, the communities that impressed me the most that I saw at the national shows were from the West Tennessee Retail Alliance that was formed by Mike Philpo and Jim Blankenship. They had the West Tennessee Industrial Alliance that then grew into the West Tennessee Retail Alliance. And from that, it was so nice the impact that they had. That national show, they had matching shirts and some marketing materials that Younger and Associates, Sharon Younger, had put together for them, and started marketing themselves to the retailers. And it was just a great effort that they put together, and we're getting a little bit of traction. And I started noticing, I thought, I've spent years packaging up communities to sell those communities to retailers. And I was looking at the materials they had and thought, I can really help a lot of these communities with really enhanced marketing materials from the retail perspective, and help kind of guide them on the right retailers and restaurants that might be a good fit for their community. So I worked with Mike Philpo to brainstorm some ideas around that. And it really just took off. And then, Joe, that's when you and I got connected because we were looking at how can we train the communities on best practices in retail recruitment. And you got real involved with it and said, I think we can look at some grant opportunities. Excuse me for that cough. Um, I think we can look at some grant opportunities that we can help a lot of the communities in our region put together these marketing materials, go through a training program. And between what you put together through a USDA grant, TVA, Tennessee Economic and Community Development, we were able to all work together and have about 16 communities go through the first retail academy that we held in Jackson, Tennessee. And it was such a successful program that it's something that we've continued every year since in working in the state of Tennessee. And Tennessee Economic and Community Development has really adopted that program and helped it grow. But what I thought was so cool about that first year of doing it is that you, the Southwest Tennessee Development District, actually won an award from NATO on innovation for the work that you did putting all of that together. And I know that was one of several awards that you've won and how you've helped the communities. But when I think about Retail Academy now, we've trained about 400 communities nationwide, and it really all started with you in West Tennessee almost a decade ago. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, it was exciting, and I think, to be quite transparent, one thing in Tennessee that I guess makes us look at retail is that really our state tax structure is primarily based on sales tax, and retail creates that sales tax. And thinking back to those days, Lacy, with the Retail Academy, the thing that I guess surprised me, and you can talk a little bit about this, is it really didn't matter how small the community was. There was a place for them in retail.
Absolutely. I completely agree because it's really just about finding the right retailer that matches up where that retailer has a model that they can be profitable. So think about some of our smaller communities, smaller as far as population goes, and you'll find a Subway, O'Reilly Auto Parts, a Dollar General, and maybe even a Family Dollar, and then the brands scale up from there. I mean, there's even C stores, but it just keeps growing. Once you get that grocery store in, then you're going to have, kind of the usual suspects that will follow the grocery store and go in. So you're right. Then you hope for a Tractor Supply, right? And there's just always, no matter what tier there is, if that community has a population of about 1,500 or more, then there's probably a good retailer that we can find that's going to fit. I mean, you see a lot of the fast food restaurants, Jack's and McDonald's, and then you work your way up to Taco Bell and maybe a KFC and Yum Brands and some of those that they can locate multiple locations all over the state. And that's where retail is going to be a lot different than traditional industrial recruitment, is that retailers want to build multiple locations within close proximity to each other so that they can share in their branding, their distribution, and their management. And so they'll come in and do a multiple store strategy within an area. So that really helps, and you can take that regional approach.
Lacy, what would you say are some common maybe misconceptions that communities have when they first start the retail recruitment process?
Well, I think that people think it's a lot easier than it actually is. So I think people get attached to the brand that they like because we can all relate to retailers and restaurants. We think about where we like to shop and where we like to eat. And really, that's a function of the operations side of the house, the product that's being sold, the marketing, the customer service. That is operations. Where communities can be most effective in retail recruitment is through the real estate. So the common misperception is how critical the real estate is, and how retailers are different from other commercial real estate classes in that they all want to locate right on top of each other. They really like to cluster, and they like that retail synergy. And and I hear a lot of communities making the assumptions that that retailer should be on the opposite end of town so that they won't have any competition over there. And that's just not the way it works. We as consumers are a bit lazy in the way we shop. So we want to find one central hub and have every single brand we want within that one central hub. And, you know, a lot of retailers would rather locate in the parking lot of another retail location than to be isolated on their own out on the other end of town. So those are two things actually. One is really separating mentally the operations versus the real estate, knowing that your approach as a community needs to be through the real estate. And then number two, understanding those real estate needs, that you need only maybe a 1 acre lot as close as possible to the largest retailer in town. That's going to be your good real estate site.
And I would assume, Lacy, in your career that you've seen a lot of changes in the retail market, retail development. But you still believe that there definitely is a need for brick and mortar stores, and how do you view the brick and mortar store now with online? Can they coexist?
Absolutely. This is a question that has been circulating around our industry for, well, really since Amazon started dominating online sales. And brick and mortar is alive and well. Per the US Census Bureau, online sales still only account for about 16% of overall retail sales. So, majority of our purchases, believe it or not, are still in the store. But what every retailer is looking for is ways that they can have the seamless integration between the online sales and the brick and mortar. So you have to have both, and that's what a lot of them have figured out for survival. And brick and mortar's here to stay. Online sales are here to stay. Amazon's dominated the lion's share of online sales, but Walmart's made some really strong strides lately, and so has Target, where you can order. Let's go to Walmart, for instance, where you can order on their app and just pick up your groceries, or even in some cities, have those groceries delivered to you. And that's extremely appealing right now. So, what we're learning is Amazon has been trying to do brick and mortar locations for quite some time now, and they continue to fail at their attempts. I've jokingly heard it called the land of the misfit toys, every attempt that Amazon has had to find real estate. And there's long term predictions that Walmart will outpace Amazon with online sales at some point because they already have the brick and mortar locations. And if you think about those brick and mortar locations serving as many fulfillment centers for the online sales, it's far more effective. Some of the new Target prototypes, they're actually allocating anywhere from 20 to 30,000 square feet of the store just for their online fulfillment, with a separate pickup lane for those. So the brick and mortar retailers will start changing their prototypes to incorporate the convenience that the consumer has pretty much demanded that they want. And I get it. My friends that have children, they say, how hard it is to take your kids into the grocery store. I can't handle that. They're going to be grabbing, everything they can see on the bottom aisle, and especially the candy, throw it in the cart. And it's really difficult. And so if you can order all those online and just pick it up, real convenient, then one, if you're anything like me, you're going to save money because you're going to be more controlled against the impulse buys. But two, it just makes the whole process a lot faster.
Most of our rural communities depend on the mom and pop type operation, the unique type small store. Do you encourage those folks to incorporate some type of online business with their mom and pop operation?
Absolutely. What we like to learn from the national retailers are best practices. What are they doing to survive? What are the national retailers doing to increase their profitability? And then take those best practices and then advise the small businesses to do the same. And online sales is no exception to that rule. I understand it can be a bit challenging. My sister owns a clothing boutique in Lubbock, Texas. She's had it for about 25 years. And so she, as a small clothing boutique, was really an early adopter in her online store. And there were a lot of challenges back then in having the right software. And she's a clothing boutique who would get a shirt or order a shirt, and she'd get two smalls, two mediums, and two larges. Well, if somebody bought that medium shirt online, at the same time somebody bought it in the store, she might, if she calibrated those online sales with her store at the end of the day, she might have accidentally oversold her product. And that's where it's more challenging for the local boutiques is, the product that you have that you can constantly sell and making sure that you're pulling it off the floor as soon as it sells online. And there's some expense and challenges with that that make it harder for small businesses. But I highly encourage the small businesses to still have an online presence. And what they can do is feature particular products and do live streaming through social media. You can sell through Facebook and Instagram and several other platforms. And so that is a great option for small businesses now that didn't exist a decade ago when my sister started trying this. And there's a few that we've seen that do a great job of, live streaming two or three products, not necessarily putting their entire inventory online, but they'll promote two or three things and really use social media for their marketing and their sales, which works. And I also want to add to talking about when you mentioned, small businesses are, and a lot of times fulfilling all the needs for rural communities. And there's often a sentiment and an argument that comes up, well, we don't want the national retailers to put our small businesses out of business. And I encourage people to think about the difference in your experience as a consumer in a national store or restaurant versus that local business. Uh, let's take a coffee shop, for instance. Um, a boutique coffee shop on Main Street. You go there for a sense of community. You're going to sit down, you're going to visit, you're going to see your neighbors, and you're going to catch up. You're going to have an experience. It'll take some time. And really enjoy that and have heart and soul and character that all comes with it, right? And you think about a Starbucks. Starbucks, you go through the drive-through as quickly as you possibly can, getting from point A to point B. Your duration in a Starbucks is typically very short. And so they have different models, each of them. A lot of times these national brands will have a larger economic impact. So if a Starbucks, they do about $1.5 million dollars a year. Well, the stores will do anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million, one unit for 1 year. And a local coffee shop might have a revenue of about 200,000 or so. Starbucks might employ 30 to 50 people, and a local coffee shop might have 5 people. So there are different economic impacts, but what we like to see is that holistic model of if you focus on the national retailers, and then you get the sales tax revenue, as you mentioned in Tennessee, if you're getting 2.5% back on $1 million in sales, and that's $25,000 that's coming in to help fund the school systems and increase the municipal budgets. And what's left of that you can allocate back to investing in the downtown to really support things like events and festivals that are bringing foot traffic to downtown to drive sales to that local business. So you really think holistically, but we absolutely believe that local businesses are their heart, the soul, the character, and they need the investment from the community. And every time you spend your money on anything, you're placing a vote for what you want to see in the future of the marketplace. And people do really need to think about shopping local, supporting their local businesses as much or more than they do the national stores.
I know you've partnered with lots of communities, Lacy, and I think we all love success stories. Is there a particular story, maybe of a smaller community that was struggling to attract retail that you were able to work with and has been successful in that process?
Well, yes, there's multiple, and right in your region of West Tennessee, but all across Tennessee. And no, this is a national podcast, but given our history in Tennessee, I'll focus on that. Um, we've seen, for instance, in Bolivar, there's a new Jack store, and the mayor Mayor Matizik worked so hard for years on that, was able to talk them into coming to town, and it was a great success. And they're going to do over $1 million a year in sales. I think about Dyersburg and Dyersburg Commons, where the city set up a TIF there, the tax increment financing, to help the developer make a deal happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it allowed for a brand new shopping center to come into Dyersburg. And there's several examples. I think that's happening in Paris right now. I love the story of Cookeville, Tennessee, with the population at that time. It had about 32,000 people. And we were able to prove a retail trade area of about 200,000 people, because they have such a large regional pool from about 14 counties between Nashville and Knoxville, really between Farragut and Mount Juliet, or if you're or Lebanon, if you're getting specific with it. But we said, Cookeville can support about 200,000 people, and we were able to work with the city and the county and the developer. And they have a brand new 230,000 square foot shopping center called the Shops at Eagle Point now, anchored by Publix and Academy Sports. There was a TIF and a pilot that was set up there as well, where the city and the county helped incentivize that project and made it happen. But they get about $1 million a year back in retail sales tax off that shopping center that goes to help support the schools. So, I go from Bolivar to
Sure. Well,
Paris, Dyersburg. I mean, population less than 10,000, some of those communities.
when you work with a community, how important is it for that local government to have policies and regulations in effect that attract new business?
Oh, it's a great question. And a lot of what we've been hearing post pandemic from the retailers and developers is they're having a very difficult time getting permits. And it's just the process has really bogged them down and it's been slow. And so expediting permit approvals really makes a difference in being business friendly for these brands. These brands do want zoning. They want to know that if they're making a long-term multi-million-dollar investment in an area, that they are land is zoned in such a way that it's protecting their neighbors to the right and to the left and across the street, to stay in the commercial space. So, sometimes I think we have a mentality that less policy and less regulation is better. And what I hear from my brands is we want a standard. Just tell us what it is on the front end, stick to the rules, stick to the timelines, don't change them in the middle of the game. And then we know what to work around. But more importantly, to have somebody in the community who can be a local liaison to help the developer or the retailer navigate those approvals is so important, because that a lot of times that's where things get stuck, is just not knowing who to talk to when you come up on a question or a problem. And that really slows things down. And you think about these retailers, great story from Honey Baked Ham. They came and we hosted a webinar that they participated in, and it was one of those situations where you have to put yourself in the shoes of the retailer. They said, when do you think we as Honey Baked Ham do all of our sales? Well, November and December for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So if we have delays on permitting or development and we can't get open and marketing our store by October, then we're going to miss the majority of our sales volume for the whole year. So it can really, it can be detrimental to retail to not open in time. Or clothing boutiques with their spring inventory, if they're ordering all their inventory in advance, but then the store doesn't open until the middle of the summer, they just have to burn the cost of all that inventory. So it's a really important that there is a process that is easy to understand on getting permits and entitlements and approvals and zoning.
Lacy, in the time we've got left, I know we've talked quite a bit about Tennessee, and Retail Strategies is actually located in Birmingham, Alabama. But Strategies is a national company. So talk a little bit about your ability to work really anywhere in the country.
We're very active all over the country, and we have a team of, let's see, today with 77 people on our team. And the way it works, there's a variety of different ways we work with communities. So a lot of what we've discussed today is our national retail recruitment platform, where we are hired by a community and we develop a retail recruitment plan, and then we implement that plan on behalf of the community. We do an inventory of all the real estate. We look at retailers and restaurants that are not in that city that should be, come up with that prospect list, and then we proactively reach out to the prospects, match them up with the real estate, and then report back to the community where we can get those conversations going. And it's like anything in sales or economic development. We'll come up with a list of 50 prospects, and, we'll do our initial wave of customized outreach to each one of them, which takes some time. But we might get 4 or 5 live ones on the hook, right? And then it takes about another 18 months for that transaction to happen until the cash register is actually ringing. So it's a lot of prospecting and it's a long game, but that's our national retail recruitment platform. We currently have about 200 communities that have engaged Retail Strategies on that. They're currently active, about 200. We have our Retail Academy program, which is where we would develop a retail recruitment plan on behalf of the community, and then we train that community leader how they can implement the plan. In fact, we have Shreveport, Louisiana in our office today going through the training program. And people can either come to Birmingham for that training, or if it's a large regional event, we will go to them. If we have 4 or more communities that are going to do it, we will travel to put on a Retail Academy workshop. We have downtown revitalization, which is really about coming up with a local task force and assigning a work action plan for small incremental changes you can make in your downtown that are low cost but have big impact. And so every single one of those downtown revitalization plans is customized for the community and for the local task force. We develop the plan and then work as an accountability partner with that task force to implement the plan. And then finally, we have our small business support. And small business support is where the county typically would invest in a software that every small business in the community can have access to. Each small business would have their own username and login. And this has several different learning paths. And for an entire year, there's a series of small training videos. And by small, I mean short. They're 3-minute videos. So I think of it almost like the TikTok of small business training. That is unlimited access for those small businesses. And that's been very successful. We went through 3 or 4 different iterations of that. And ultimately, what we found is that we had to meet the small business owner where they're at, which means they might have 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there, or they might have 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon. So we developed this software that really works for those small business owners and received a lot of positive feedback from it. So it's all things retail. It's downtown, it's small business support, it is national retail, and there's a series of where we either empower the community through training, or we work as staff augmentation as an outsourced extension of staff to implement on their behalf.
Well, I can tell our listeners from personal experience in retail development, no one does it better than Lacy Beasley in Retail Strategies. Lacy, before we leave, how do folks get in contact with you?
Love to hear from anybody that wants to reach out. I am Lacy, Lacy, no E, Lacy at retailstrategies.com. You can email me. You can find Retail Strategies website or follow us on social media. But definitely just reach out, or you can even call me. My cell phone number's on the website. And I would love to connect you with the proper team member to talk about your customized needs.
Well, thank you, Lacy, my friend. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and look forward to us getting together soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.